Well, hey there, everyone. It's Mrs. Asaro, and I am here to teach your class how to make revisions on your personal narrative. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Mrs. Asaro, and I have an online teaching store called All-in-One Middle School. I was a teacher for 34 years. Teaching language arts was and is my passion. The goal of this lesson is to make revisions to an original personal narrative. Narrative writing is a whole process. Be sure to also look for the first video if you haven't already. It's called Personal Narrative Writing Part 1, where we wrote a rough draft of an original personal narrative. This presentation, along with my guided notes, is available to print in my TPT store. I'll leave a link to that in the video description. If you are using the guided notes, you're going to want to fill them in when you see this icon. If you're not using the guided notes, that's okay. Just be sure to have some paper or a computer so you can write as you're watching. If your teacher lets you work with a partner, you will turn and talk in certain portions. I hope you find this helpful. Let's dive in. We're going to start by talking about a mentor text. It's always good to have a mentor text to refer to when learning skills. It doesn't have to be a text, though. Sometimes songs are a great way to learn new skills for writing. For this lesson, we will examine the song Love Story by Taylor Swift. Your teacher may prefer that you use a different mentor text. If so, when you take notes, just substitute what your teacher tells you to use. So now you're going to pause my video and click on Love Story. It's about 4 minutes long. While you are listening, think about the basic plot elements of the song. The setting, the characters, the conflict, the solution, but also really important, listen for what you think is the most important moment in the song. The link is in the video description. I've also provided a link for the lyrics in case you need them. We will discuss this video a bit later on in the slideshow. So pause my video and watch Love Story and then come on back to me. Okay, we're going from rough draft to final copy today. There is no doubt that you have read and enjoyed stories and movies. These are narratives as they tell a story. Aside from being fun to do, writing narratives is something you will need to do at least a few times in your academic career. Writing personal narratives is a great place to start. Because the events are true, it's much easier to come up with ideas. Once you have a rough draft of a personal narrative, you'll want to add some extra elements to make it even better. You'll need your rough draft of a personal narrative to do this lesson. Remember, you can always go back to part 1 if you need to do that. Some of these elements include dialogue, internal monologue, figurative language, and more. So we are going from rough draft to revisions to get a stronger narrative. Just a note, I do also have a video on regular narrative writing where you're creating a fictional story. This is different. This is a personal narrative. It's something that you wrote about a moment in time from your own life. So I just want to make sure that if you are in the wrong video, to go ahead and change that now. So improving your personal narrative, let's get on board. When you wrote your rough draft, you were focused on all of the plot elements. Now you're going to work to improve your story. You're going to think of revision as tuning a musical instrument. You keep making small adjustments until everything sounds just right. Today's goal is to make improvements on your personal narrative rough draft. You will add elements that will elevate the level of your writing and make it more engaging to your reader. So here we are, we have our first guided note icon, and we'll have them through the end of the video. So I just wanted to key you in on that. So here are some revision ideas. You know, there is so much you can do to make revisions. We could do a million different things. So we're just going to focus on a few. As we go through the lesson today, the elements we'll work on are a strong lead, where you want to grab the reader's attention from the very start, the dialogue, where characters are speaking to each other, internal monologue, what a character is thinking, figurative language, similes, metaphor, sensory images, hyperbole, and things like that. Show, don't tell, when you describe using details rather than stating it outright. Symbolism, where you use objects that have a deeper meaning than just being an object. And a strong ending, where you leave the reader with a satisfying ending. A little note here, when we talk about characters, these are going to be actual people from a personal moment in your life. And my guess is that your internal monologue is going to be what you yourself was thinking. So now you're going to try it. You're going to think about the song Love Story by Taylor Swift. Turn and talk to your partner about these speaking points and fill in your guided notes. You're going to describe them briefly or use an example. Your opinion, how effective it was on a scale of 1 to 10, and why you gave it that rating. So you're going to focus on these elements: a strong lead, the dialogue, the internal monologue, figurative language, show, don't tell, symbolism, and a strong ending. So you're going to evaluate Taylor Swift's song, Love Story. Pause my video and turn and talk and fill in your guided notes. Okay. We have a revision checklist that we're going to go through step by step, and our first step is at the beginning with a strong lead. The lead is how you're going to get your reader interested in your story. There are many different ways to start a story, but here are some that we can focus on today. You can start with dialogue, where you have characters speaking to each other. You can start with sensory images, where you can describe what is happening all around using what the character sees, hears, touches, tastes, and smells. You could start with an exciting action. Start with a compelling action by one of the characters or by an action occurring around a character. You could describe the setting, where you use descriptive words to show where the story is taking place. Last idea, you can give a hint at the ending, where you give a taste of the conclusion of the story. So now you're going to try it. You're going to turn and talk with your partner. You're going to try each of the lead styles for your personal narrative. You're going to record them in your guided notes. Then select your favorite. An example from Love Story has been done for you. These are different from the actual song. It's an attempt to create different leads. So I just want to clarify something here. From here on out, we're going to go through each component and you're going to try it. My job is to give you an example from Love Story, since you all listened to it. But your job is to do it for your personal narrative, not for Love Story. Okay, so here's my example. The type of lead, dialogue. I wrote, please don't go, don't listen to him. Now, P.S., far be it from me to rewrite Taylor Swift's song. I'm just doing this as an example so you'll know how to adjust the lead of your story. To do Love Story using sensory images, I wrote, lights were twinkling and dresses shimmered in the moonlight. Please note that you don't need to use every single sensory image. An exciting action. A handsome guy walked into the dance. Describe the setting. I stood on the balcony overlooking a beautiful dance. A hint at the ending. I'll love you forever. So these are different possible ways to start Love Story. So you're going to pause my video, turn and talk about your personal narrative, and fill in your guided notes where you try each of these different types of leads. So pause my video now and turn and talk. Okay, step 2, we're up to dialogue. Dialogue is so important in stories because it moves the plot along. Here are some places that you can try dialogue. You can try it at the beginning. You can try it at the inciting incident. That's where your problem is occurring. At the climax of the story, that's the point of highest tension when things change for the main character. And at the resolution, when the story is over and the problem has been solved. So now you're going to try it. Turn and talk with your partner and try adding dialogue for these points in your personal narrative. Record it in your guided notes, and here's my example from you from Love Story. So I put dialogue at the beginning. Do you know who that guy is? The inciting incident was where the problem starts is we know that the father doesn't want her to marry him. So my dialogue is, Dad, why don't you like him? The climax is when he gets down on one knee, right? And he asks her to marry him. And so I wrote for my dialogue, I would be honored to be your wife. The resolution at the end, let's go live happily ever after. So now pause my video. You're going to try dialogue for your narrative, not for Love Story, and record it in your notes. Okay, step 3, internal monologue. Internal monologue tells us what a character is thinking. This can be done in first person, meaning the character is telling the story, or in third person when a narrator is telling a story. Most likely your personal narrative will be in first person. It doesn't have to be, but it probably will be. You can try internal monologue in the same places as the dialogue, at the beginning, the inciting incident, the climax, and the resolution. Now you're going to try it. Turn and talk with your partner. Try adding internal monologue for these points in your personal narrative. You're going to record it in your guided notes. Here's my example from Love Story. So if you put internal monologue at the beginning, an example is, I wish I could go down to the party. The inciting incident, my father doesn't understand anything about me. The climax is he's seriously about to propose. And the resolution, I'll never take this man for granted. Internal monologue does not need to be written in quotes. It doesn't have to be in italics unless it's something that's a very, very strong thought and emotion. So you can just write it out regularly. So pause my video and turn and talk and try adding some internal monologue to your personal narrative. Okay, step 4, figurative language. This will embellish your story and make it more sophisticated. Here are some types of figurative language to consider. Simile, a comparison of two unlike objects using like or as. A metaphor, when you don't use the words like or as, but you compare two unlike objects, so you would use the words is, was, are, and am. Personification, giving a human quality to an object. And hyperbole, where you over-exaggerate for effect. So now you're going to try it. Turn and talk with your partner. Try adding figurative language for these points in your personal narrative. Record in your guided notes, and here's your example from Love Story. So for simile, I wrote, I felt as lonely as a violin playing to an empty room. My metaphor, I did not use the words like or as for a metaphor. I just used the word was. The party was a symphony of elegance with every guest a note in a grand masterpiece. Personification. The twinkling lights whispered their secrets to the night. Okay, because I gave the human quality of being able to whisper to the lights. Hyperbole. The exaggeration, I cried a million tears begging you not to go. So now you're going to try it. Pause my video and turn and talk and fill in your guided notes. Okay, step 5, show, don't tell. Show, don't tell means that you describe what happens with thoughts and actions rather than telling it outright. Here are some places that might be good to use this strategy. When a character has a strong emotion, to describe character traits, to describe relationships between characters, setting the mood, and when there is tension and conflict. So now we're not going to do this for every single place. We're going to find 2 places in your personal narrative where you told something. Then, instead of telling it, you're going to describe it by showing instead. Record it in your guided notes. An example from Love Story has been done for you. So here's my tell example, and here's my show example. You're going to do 2. I just did 1 to show you. Miss Taylor Swift wrote, "I was crying on the staircase," and I changed it to "a lump formed in my throat as tears streamed down my face." So turn and talk with your partner. Find 2 places in your personal narrative to show instead of tell, and fill in your guided notes. Okay, step 6, symbolism. This is when you have an object that represents a bigger concept. Symbols can be really anything. They could be colors, like red could equal power. Objects, a swing could symbolize change. Seasons, winter could symbolize death. The possibilities are endless. There are no rules for this. Here are some good places to consider symbolism in your personal narrative. So you could get into the part where you're showing the conflict, the problem. For example, a storm could symbolize inner turmoil or an approaching crisis. The character's development. For example, a character's broken watch might symbolize their inability to let go of the past. With objects, that's where you will probably have the easiest time doing this. A locked door might symbolize a secret that the protagonist must uncover. Dialogue, a character repeatedly referring to paths or crossroads might symbolize indecision or change. So now you're going to try it. Find 2 places in your personal narrative where you can add symbolism. Look for objects, weather, colors, things like that. I did 1 example from Love Story. You're going to pick 2, okay? I chose the object of the garden, and my possible meaning that I thought of with its beautiful flowers, it could represent love and romance. So pause my video and look for objects in your personal narrative and write down what they could possibly symbolize. By the way, if you don't have any, now's the time to add them. Okay, step 7, a strong ending. Having a powerful ending is so important in any story. Some believe it's the most important component of a narrative. There are many ways to do it, but here are some ideas. You could end with some last words from the main character. You could end with a question, end with a big idea, such as a lesson learned. That would be your theme, actually. End what we call a full circle, where you go back to something that happened earlier on and bring some closure to it. So now you're going to try it. You're going to turn and talk with your partner and try each of the ending styles for your personal narrative. You're going to record it in your guided notes. Then select your favorite. An example is done for you. So here's the type of ending, the last words, and I just wrote yes. Okay. A question. What would I do without him? The big idea. Love will prevail no matter what. That's actually what I would consider the theme of the story. Full circle. I knew from the moment I saw him on that balcony that this would be a forever love story. Pause my video, go back to your personal narrative, and try each of these ending types. Okay, your last step is to edit and publish. At this point, you're going to go back to your original personal narrative and add in your favorites of what you did in this lesson. You do not have to force everything you did in this lesson into your personal narrative. If you do that, it's not going to flow well. Only put in what is natural and improves the narrative overall. Then you'll want to edit for spelling, grammar, punctuation, and things like that. Pay close attention to punctuating dialogue. And now you'll be ready to publish. And that is a wrap. Be sure to tune in for more Teach My Class episodes. You can also check out First Chapter Friday on my YouTube channel, where I read the first chapters of my favorite middle school novels. Hope to see you soon.